There's a theory going around that Saitama is actually God in One Punch Man, and I think this mainly stems from the fact that they're both bald. We know that Saitama basically has the powers of God. He can break the laws of reality, he can't take damage, and he can grow in power seemingly infinitely until he beats whatever opponent comes his way. And we know that God can manipulate also the laws of reality, possess people, and he's bald. So there is a possibility that this is some sort of reverse Saitama, some complete reflection of his character, but from another dimension. And we know that the multiverse theory is real because of the most recent chapters of One Punch Man, as we got introduced to the new supervillain called Empty Void, and he went outside of reality, where he's able to see all the different parallel dimensions, and he's able to attack from the outside. And this is just using a small fraction of God's power. So there could be some validity to this in the sense that we know Saitama has the ability to break reality just as God does, although maybe Saitama just simply doesn't know the techniques that God does. If Saitama is God just from, let's say, a parallel universe, and in this universe he's good, and in some other universe he's bad, it could be possible that Saitama just simply never learned about his full potential. And as we saw in his fight with Garo, he's able to simply look at people using techniques and copy them with ease. I think it's safe to say that in the battle with God at the end of One Punch Man, Saitama could start copying God's techniques. And what if it's some sort of self-fulfilling prophecy where Saitama defeats God, but in order to do so, he had to copy God's techniques, and something happens to him where he slowly starts to become the evil which he just destroyed. And thus, it's some sort of cycle of repetition. Could Saitama's battle with God corrupt him and turn him into the God he sought to destroy? Speaking of Saitama, have you ever wanted to talk to Saitama? Because now you can with our sponsor, Poly AI. Poly AI is this incredible app where they have AI agents programmed as certain characters, certain celebrities, and you can talk to them. It knows like everything about the character and even has their personality ingrained in it. Saitama. Who's stronger, Garo or Boros?
Garo is stronger than Boros in terms of power.
Saitama, are you excited about your battle with God? Because I am.
I'm actually quite looking forward to it. It's been a while since I faced a worthy opponent.
And of course, there's tons of characters and celebrities you can interact with. Like, I can even do Goku. Goku, what's your favorite transformation?
I don't really have a favorite form, but the one that's most useful to me is the Super Saiyan Blue form.
You can start talking to your favorite anime characters today. Just download Poly AI with my link in the description and use code MASTAR at checkout to get some free playtime. Now, obviously, it doesn't make too much sense that Saitama would become corrupted at some point and start to turn into this monstrosity that is the monster god. We know his personality is lighthearted and good-hearted. He doesn't really have a bad bone in his body. He can be lazy, which maybe can be interpreted as bad or poor judgment or whatever, but Saitama is not a bad person. I mean, for all intensive purposes, he is a good guy. And so I don't really see how he could transition into God at some point at the end of the series unless something just starts to set him off. Now, we have seen some inclinations where Saitama did say something strange and raise some eyebrows. For example, at one point when he's fighting Garo and he's sifting through the rubble for pieces of his house, he says, "Sometimes I feel like it'd be easier to just blow up the whole planet." And this took the audience by surprise because we're like, whoa, what? I mean, that was really one of the first and only times Saitama has ever really truly showed any malicious intent. But I don't want to dive too deep into what he said there because it could just be misinterpretation. I don't think Saitama wants to blow up the planet or he's even fed up enough to do that, but it definitely is peculiar that he said it. But now that we know that there is a multiverse theory, there could easily be another Saitama in another dimension that has morphed into God. If there is a Saitama which is all good, there could be a Saitama which is all bad. However, it's more so my belief that Saitama is the singularity. In a sense, he is the universe correcting itself. This monster god came in and tried to corrupt everything outside of the natural order of things, and Saitama is essentially the universe or the real god's method of returning Earth and the universe to its natural state. So, in my opinion, in the end fight between Saitama and God, when he defeats God, all powers in the universe will cease to exist, including Saitama's. I think that the monster god truly is the source of all powers, but for the purposes of this video, what we're really talking about is the potential for Saitama to be God. Because besides saying some awkward things like he would destroy the planet, let's take a look at the fight between Saitama and Garo when Garo had taken a sliver of God's power. At the beginning of the fight, they seemed equal, which would imply that since Garo only had a sliver of God's power and he was equal to Saitama, that God is infinitely stronger than Saitama. But as we saw as the battle progressed, for Garo, it was like he was fighting a god. No matter how hard he tried, no matter what moves he copied, Saitama just continually skyrocketed in power and overcame all of Garo's moves. No matter what Garo tried to do, it was impossible, literally. And that's what a battle with God should be, a battle with the impossible. And we saw in that fight how Saitama's power continually rose exponentially as the battle progressed. Now, what happens if in his battle with God, he starts out losing or equal, but he continues to grow in power to the point where he becomes God himself? He needs to increase his strength so much when battling the omnipresent being of God that in order to match the power of God, his body changes and adapts to put him at equal footing with God, or if not even stronger than the monster god. But at that point, what if all that power corrupts Saitama absolutely and turns him into the monstrosity which he just destroyed? A self-fulfilling prophecy, which perhaps God has planned all along. If God knows that he is Saitama, which I don't think he does, again, these are theories that other people have proposed, but I'm just kind of laying the facts out there. I personally, I don't think that Saitama is God, but I also don't think it's impossible. So I just want to lay out all of the facts for you here. It seems to me that God doesn't know much about Saitama. He definitely knows a lot about Blast, and he has a big target on Blast's back, and Blast is starting to figure out about Saitama's true strength, but God doesn't really still seem to notice too much about Saitama. And that alone, like when Saitama picked up the black cube and God didn't say, "Oh, you're the one I've been looking for," or anything like that, that alone to me is strong evidence that God is not Saitama, unless for some reason this god's memory is wiped. But if you're God, I mean, you're omnipresent, there shouldn't be anything that can wipe your memory, even Blast. You would think that God would know how strong Saitama is regardless, because his monsters on Earth are being obliterated in one punch. You would think that God would raise an eyebrow, but for whatever reason, curiously, he hasn't targeted Saitama yet. And that's a big mystery in One Punch Man. We know why he's targeting Blast. Blast is a threat. He has God's powers. He probably stole God's powers, or he was a God avatar at one point and broke free. Saitama doesn't need it. Saitama hasn't been offered power by God, probably because he's uncorruptible. So it just doesn't really make too much sense to me that they're the same person. I think that Saitama is the answer to God, not that they're the same person. However, as you can see from the points in this video, it's definitely not outside the realm of possibility. And I think that the clearest indicator is the battle between Saitama and Garo, just seeing how powerful Saitama became, where his sneeze was enough to destroy Jupiter. So if in his battle with God, he becomes 1,000,000 times or 1,000,000,000 times stronger than even that, his very existence becomes a threat to humanity. And then what happens? Blast seals him inside of some sort of dimensional gate for eternity because he's too dangerous. And inside that dimensional gate for millions of years, he sits there festering, surviving, because we know he doesn't die in space. He doesn't even need air to breathe. And he just becomes evil from being imprisoned or something. I mean, there is a possibility that Murata and One can take us in that direction. And this is what I love so much about the series, is they've really left a lot of these huge questions open-ended, and we can talk about it forever. And it also gives them a lot of breathing room to write in the future and throw us curveballs that we don't expect. So my answer in this video is, yeah, it's possible. I'd say it's probably something like a 10% chance of being correct. There is some facts that would indicate that this theory is potentially correct, but it's mostly underlined in speculation. I would say there's too much evidence pointing that Saitama is not God for this theory to really have too much validity. However, it is not outside the realm of possibility. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you like this theory? Do you want Saitama to be become God and at the end? Or do you want him to just straight up fight God, win, and, that's the end of Powers and the end of the series? What if Saitama becomes, the God villain at the end of the series and we get One Punch Man 2 and it's just everybody versus Saitama? That'd be cool. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm Mastar, and I'll talk to you on the next one.